Next week on Days of Our Lives, one of Salem's most emotional and haunting storylines unfolds when Stephanie Johnson's long-buried past comes crashing back to life. The peaceful facade she's built with Alex Kyriakis and her family begins to crumble the moment Jeremy Horton returns to town, and what happens on one stormy night years ago is finally about to come to light. It all begins when Stephanie receives a shocking knock on her door. Jeremy Horton, her ex-boyfriend, the man she thought she'd never see again, stands before her with a smile that hides years of deceit. She's instantly frozen in fear, her pulse racing, her mind flashing back to the painful, terrifying memories she's worked so hard to bury. To everyone else in Salem, Jeremy appears to be a changed man, polite, charming, and ready to start a new chapter. He's back, claiming he's turned his life around, now working as a substitute teacher at Salem Elementary. But Stephanie knows the truth. Behind the charming exterior lies a dark, dangerous man capable of cruelty. What no one else knows is that Stephanie's new book, One Stormy Night, isn't just fiction. It's a thinly veiled confession of what truly happened years ago between her and Jeremy. The novel tells the story of a young woman trapped in an abusive relationship with a man who hides his crimes behind charm and lies. Stephanie wrote the book under a pseudonym, believing no one would ever connect it to her, but now that Jeremy is back, she fears he's recognized the truth, and that he'll do anything to silence her before the past resurfaces. As Jeremy begins inserting himself back into Salem life, Steve Johnson and Kayla start to notice that Stephanie is acting strange. She's jumpy, distracted, and terrified every time Jeremy's name comes up. Alex senses it too and grows increasingly suspicious. But Stephanie continues to lie, insisting that she and Jeremy simply had a bad breakup. The reality, however, is far darker. Years ago, when Stephanie and Jeremy dated, he was already involved in criminal activity, smuggling, fraud, and drug dealing. But the worst came one stormy night, when an argument turned violent. Jeremy, in a rage, tried to drown Stephanie in a hot tub after accusing her of betraying him to the police. She barely survived, managing to escape, and her father Steve covered up part of what happened to protect her. Stephanie has carried the trauma ever since, but she never told the full truth, not to Alex, not even to her parents. Her book was the only way she could release the pain without naming names. Now, with Jeremy back in Salem, teaching Thomas DiMera's class, Stephanie's fear grows. She knows he's capable of manipulation, and she's terrified he might hurt someone innocent, especially a child. Jeremy visits her under the pretense of making amends, but there's a threatening edge to his words. He reminds her of that night, hinting that if she doesn't keep quiet, he'll make sure her secret gets out, or worse. Steve begins to suspect something's off when he learns about Jeremy's teaching job and starts digging into his past again. He discovers that Jeremy's supposed reformation isn't as clean as it looks. He changed his name briefly while living out of state and was investigated for fraud just a few years earlier. Steve warns Stephanie to stay away from him, but it's too late. Jeremy has already begun stalking her again, watching her every move, and sending her cryptic notes referencing her book. "You shouldn't have written about me, Stephanie." Stephanie tries to hide her fear from Alex, but when he finds one of the threatening notes, he demands answers. The confrontation becomes emotional and explosive as Stephanie finally breaks down and tells Alex everything: the abuse, the night she almost died, and how she's been haunted ever since. Alex is horrified and vows to protect her, but his anger leads him to make a reckless decision. He confronts Jeremy himself. That confrontation turns violent. Jeremy, who's clearly still dangerous, taunts Alex, admitting just enough to make Alex realize the full truth, that Jeremy didn't just hurt Stephanie emotionally. He may have killed someone years ago during his criminal dealings. When Alex threatens to go to the police, Jeremy smirks and warns him that if he does, Stephanie's name will be dragged into the scandal. Meanwhile, Steve secretly works to gather evidence, determined to expose Jeremy once and for all. He learns that one of Jeremy's old associates, a man linked to the smuggling ring, was found dead shortly after Jeremy fled Salem years ago, and the murder was never solved. Steve begins to suspect that Jeremy didn't just abuse Stephanie, he may have killed to cover up his crimes that same stormy night.